I am Shanna Dildine, and I will be explaining how we use the reflective analysis of student work template. So in column 1 of the template, you will find that this is where we put the focus learning target, the formative evidence data. So number 1 is the measurable overarching IEP goal. With this, you want to make sure and use a SMART goal, a goal that is specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time limited. And it should be based on your data and tied back to a TEK. So for my student, student H, what we will be working on is the use of assistive technology to compose grade level compositions using UEB Braille contractions with 80% accuracy. And we tied that back to a second grade ELAR TEK, TEK 23A through E, which is basically using spelling when you're writing papers, compositions, and spelling words correctly. And a lot of times the student H can spell the word orally, but she has problems when she puts it in Braille because she does things like mixes up contractions like ST, CH, EN, and IN. So number 2 is your measurable lesson objective and learning target. So this is the learning target for my student. Student H, this is when she will use assistive technology, either the Braille Writer or the Braille Sense, to compose a composition using the UEB Braille contractions with 80% accuracy. And number 3 in column 1 is the evidence gathered relevant to the lesson goal that will lead to the analysis and the next steps. So with student H, she started out at 65% accuracy and our goal was 80% accuracy. This was based on the number of times or opportunities that she had to use UEB Braille contractions within her composition. And her goal was 80% accuracy in using those contractions. So in column 2, that's the reflective analysis of student evidence. This is data-based. It is what questions does the data prompt about the student's learning. So one thing we wanted to see was which device does she use to get the best accuracy. And we determined that she gets a better accuracy rate when she uses the Braille Sense. Column 3 is reflective learning community's response. What resources or people did we engage with, and what purposeful feedback was provided to guide our next steps. So when I met with her gen ed team and when I met with her special ed team, we looked at her use of assistive technology and using Braille contractions to write compositions. And she gets a better accuracy rate with the Braille Sense and then she does the Braille Writer. And so we kind of like wanted to find out why. We figured out she makes less mistakes using the Braille Sense, but it's not because she knows the contractions. It is because she does trial and error. So instead of, if she types an F for a D, she would sit there and use trial and error until she got the correct dot pattern for the letter she was looking for. So really it's not because she is using any other strategy other than the trial and error method. So in column 4, the strategy column for our next steps, we wanted to go through each Braille contraction, see if she knows it, see if she reverses it with something, and after that, what strategies can we give her to use so that she will rely less on the trial and error method or the auditory feedback from the Braille Sense, because when she's in the classroom using the Braille Writer, she doesn't have that auditory feedback, and that's when she will be writing a lot of her compositions. So our next step was to come up with a plan of action for her and strategies for her to use to be able to determine which contraction is which. Also, we wanted, after we got into this further, a couple of weeks in, we wanted to make it where she is self-evaluating herself. We found that she would use the strategies when she was looking at the Braille contractions in isolation, but not necessarily use them when she's composing text in the classroom. So this student is very driven by a grade. She wants to be an A student, so we talked to her about a 70 as a C, an 80 as a B, a 90 as a D. And so our next step was also, one of our next steps was also to talk with the behavior specialist and come up with a plan of action to have her self-evaluate her own progress and set her own goals, and it gave her more control over where she wanted that to go. So this is how we used the reflective analysis of student work template to guide our instruction. When we completed this for 5 weeks, I saw her multiple times during the week, each week. We met back with a team once a week. We will continue to use this throughout the year because we want it to be, her goal to be within the IEP school year. So we will come back and see if she moves from the 65% to the 80%. She is making progress. She is starting that progress.